Thank you for joining me back on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, and the deadline for franchise tags was on yesterday, March 5th. That being a lot of these teams getting a lot of deals done. A lot of teams were under a lot of pressure to get these deals done with some of their star players, and I'm just going to go over a lot of them that I saw. I think I got most of them, but there was others that happened a little bit later than I did these notes, or some that just broke today that I'll try to also bring up and give you my thoughts on as well. And the day started really with a lot of releases and just some quick notes that I have here. The Panthers released tight end Hayden Hurst. The Jets released CJ Uzomah to save $5 million. And some of the bigger ones that came out later in the day were that the Dolphins released Jerome Baker and the Chargers releasing Eric Kendricks. For the Dolphins side of it, they weren't able to restructure Jerome Baker's contract in any way to get them under that salary cap. They're another team that has a lot of players as unrestricted free agents, and they really had to pick and choose who was worth keeping around with the amount of money that was being made. And Jerome Baker wasn't able to negotiate a restructured deal, so he'll be hitting free agency, and I'm sure he'll gain a lot of attention from various teams to acquire his services. I have seen a lot about the Pittsburgh Steelers being one of those teams. They liked him a lot coming out of Ohio State, and now they have a chance to get him, but they have to restructure potentially that deal to fit under their cap because the Steelers don't have a lot of cap, so I'm sure they'll have to restructure him. And some of the bigger news, the Giants obviously decided not to tag Saquon Barkley. The Ravens, on the other hand, franchise tagged their defensive tackle, Justin Madubuike. This was expected. A lot of people knew that the Ravens couldn't afford to let him test free agency just because of the season that he was coming off of. He had 13 sacks as a defensive tackle this past season. That's the most by a Raven player in the last 9 years. So, your hands are tied there. You can't let that guy set 1 foot out the building and potentially lose him. So they put the tag on him. They're still going to negotiate for a new contract, but at least they'll have him for at least one more season and try to negotiate something with him. Another one that was pretty big, or that happened early on, was that the Texans re-signed their tight end Dalton Schultz, and it later came out that they also re-signed their kicker Kaimi Fairbairn to another long-term deal. I think it was $13 million around, or not $13 million, 3 years, $15 million for Kaimi Fairbairn. So he'll be sticking around. They made sure to keep Dalton Schultz to keep that offensive firepower, and CJ Stroud most of all happy with a reliable weapon like Dalton Schultz was to him. And they still, with Saquon Barkley not being tagged, I'll harp on it again. I think that's a no-brainer for Saquon to go from the Giants to the Texans. Immediate success. I think it's a perfect match, but those rumors are still swirling. Something else that happened on the deadline was that the Bucs, arguably this was one of the more surprising ones for me, the Bucs tagged their safety Antoine Winfield, and a lot of reports had this trending in a positive direction that they were going to get a deal done before the deadline, but that obviously didn't happen, and Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport had it published on their social media that this was more so a placeholder for Antoine Winfield just to make sure, again, he didn't have any chance of leaving. He didn't have any chance to talk to another team. They put the franchise tag on him, and still the sensation is that they'll get a deal done. This was just as a precaution, and it says a lot to me that they put it on Antoine Winfield as a precaution. It just shows the level of importance that they have in keeping him, because the contract negotiations were already going well, but they were so, I guess, scared, for a lack of a better term, that they could lose him if he tested free agency. They couldn't take that risk, and he's coming off another great season as well. He's slowly becoming that leader of that defense. More so now, they don't re-sign Levante David, and Devin White also seems out the door, so he's going to be the one stepping into that role. They couldn't afford to lose him. I expect them to get a deal done, a sign and then get a deal done sort of situation that has been occurring a lot. But that was surprising that they franchise tagged him and weren't able to get anything done. In other news around the NFL, the other one, which was probably more surprising to me, and I'll get into this more on tomorrow's show or Friday's show in regards to all the questions I had after these deals. This was one of them. Why the Giants decided not to tag Xavier McKinney if they already were rumored to not be tagging Saquon Barkley. Xavier McKinney has been one of the more reliable, stable players and good draft picks that they've hit on in recent memory. They always draft these offensive tackles and they either don't pan out right away or they sort of lose hope in them right away. They're Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal were the ones in recent memory that they drafted, but now it seems like those guys are just bad all of a sudden. They dealt with injuries or they've not been the stalwarts that you need at the offensive tackle position, but it always seems like the Giants every year are drafting for an O-lineman. We have to get the O-line better. We have to protect the quarterback. It seems like that's been the strategy for the last 3 or 4 years, and they either don't get it right or they're just trying to move on, looking for a very fast success. And a lot of times it doesn't work like that, or they could be right and they just don't develop these guys as they should because these guys are very high prospects. Arguably, both of them were the best tackles in the class that year. And for them not to pan out, for the Giants to still harp on, fixing their offensive line, it is puzzling, but, Xavier McKinney was one that did pan out for them. He was a great draft pick for them. And, they didn't tag him. He was up for a contract extension. They decided not to do that. Now they're going to let him test free agency. And I just don't understand where the reasoning comes into that because, one, Antoine Winfield is most likely going to sign with the Bucs. So that, by default, will make Xavier McKinney the best, if not the top 2 best safeties available in free agency. And I'm sure if it came down to Xavier McKinney, if somebody offered him the same amount of money as the Giants did, he would more so be inclined to join another team that you could say values him more than the Giants did because they didn't tag him. They didn't go any further with the extension, and now another team comes knocking. I'm sure he'll be glad to join another team, and I just was very confused as to what the Giants, what Joe Shane, and Brian Dable were thinking with that move, but, it happened. It's a fact now, and we're going to have to wait till the start of the new league year, to the official start of free agency. If he's one of the first ones taken off the board, I probably expect him to be, and that's where that stands. In other news, the Colts, they tagged Michael Pittman. Same reason, they couldn't let him get out the door. They say, the general manager says that it is trending in the right direction, but he had the best season of his career, so it made sense for them not to want to lose him potentially, with Anthony Richardson trying to get back some of that success that he had in his rookie season, derailed by concussions and medical stuff. He looks promising from all the games that I saw, so they want to help him keep his number 1 receiver around and help that development. The Bears also tagged their cornerback, Jalen Johnson. They also say that the deal is close to being done for an extension, but if he does play under the tag, it'll be almost $20 million worth of a 1-year deal if they're unable to get the extension done. But that's one of the priorities for the Bears and general manager Ryan Poles. He harped a lot on keeping Jalen Johnson, valuing him as much as they do. So that's another one that I think will probably get done sooner rather than later. And 2 of the bigger ones, the more no-brainer ones as well, Brian Burns and Josh Allen were tagged officially by the Panthers and the Jaguars. 2 of the premier young pass rushers that if they hit the market, they were not going to last more than a day or two. I guarantee that. but the teams obviously saw that and valued them the same way. The Jaguars say that their deal with Josh Allen is close to being done, and they also released Rayshon Jenkins, their safety, and their corner, Darius Williams, as well, making more room for a Josh Allen deal to be done. Also, Calvin Ridley's a free agent, so if they were to sacrifice one of them, it looks like it could be Calvin Ridley just to get the Josh Allen deal done. Josh Allen had a great year this past season, setting the franchise record for the Jaguars in sacks, and just this constant progression that they've seen out of him. They couldn't let him test the market. Same with Brian Burns. He is in a more delicate situation just because it's the Panthers, and he might be looking for more success elsewhere and might not want an extension with them. Those talks could carry on a little bit later than a lot of people might expect, but I see it as, if they don't give him a good amount of money, I think I saw somewhere he might be asking for north of $26 million, around there. If they don't pay him that, I'm sure he'll not sign the franchise tag. We might have a holdout situation in place with Brian Burns. So different situations for two guys that play basically the same position but are in different spots with their teams. Other than that, the Lions re-signed Emmanuel Mosley. Their cornerback that they acquired from the San Francisco 49ers was now coming back from 2 ACL injuries after he came back from his first one this year during Week 5. He tore his other ACL, and now he's trying to come back from that. And the Lions valued him enough to give him at least a 1-year deal after devastating knee injuries. So he'll be staying in Detroit. The Patriots placed a transition tag on Kyle Duggar. That is around $13.8 million, and that allows them to match any offer that comes at Kyle Duggar in case another team offers the same amount. The Patriots have the obligation and the right to match that deal in order to keep Kyle Duggar. So there's a bit more security there. And to wrap it all up, just off of that Kyle Duggar deal, that means that the Patriots won't be tagging their offensive lineman, Mike Onwenu. He'll be a free agent. And like I mentioned before, the Jaguars released Darius Williams just to create more room for Josh Allen. All those are the moves that I saw happened. And just off of today, I'm pretty sure I saw Eagles release Avonte Maddox, one of their slot corners, dealing with a lot of injuries and had a $9 or $10 million cap hit, so it made sense for the Eagles to release him. He is still in talks with the Eagles about potentially signing him again, but for now, they have released him. And I'm trying to think of any other deal that I saw today that might have dropped before I came on here. I'm not thinking of any. None are coming to my head, but just to wrap this whole segment up, to bring up the players that are free agents because they weren't tagged, leaves it with Chris Jones, Christian Wilkins, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Onwenu, Baker Mayfield, Calvin Ridley, and Xavier McKinney. All those players had the option to be tagged, but were not tagged, obviously. Their teams decided to let them test free agency. And Chris Jones, he's closer to Kansas City than leaving, but you definitely have players on here like a Calvin Ridley, a Baker Mayfield, Josh Jacobs, Christian Wilkins, most likely, that we could see them on different teams, and they'll definitely be taking offers from other teams for not only a good amount of money that they've earned, but for an opportunity to play, potentially for a better team and find themselves in a better situation than they're coming off of this past season. All interesting stuff, all stuff that is in development and will definitely speed up over the coming days. But with that, I will send this show to its last break, and on the other side of it, I'll bring you more Cowboys news. What did Dak Prescott say about him feeling attacked? What his reactions were to the latest Jerry Jones comments, and what my thoughts are on Dak Prescott saying all of this, finally speaking to the media this offseason. My thoughts coming after this break on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. You're not going to want to miss it.